tell us again about yourself. You've been in Midlothian for how long again?
18 years.
Okay.
18 years. Everyone around here calls me Pastor Mac, but my name is Demetrius McClendon.
There you go, sir.
And so my wife and I, Alexis, we married 27 years in May. We had 3 beautiful children.
Yes.
Mackenzie is a graduate of North Texas, University of North Texas, and Michaela, she's a junior at UT Arlington. Mm-hmm. Our son Demetrius II, he's a sophomore at Midlothian High School. I was in Germany, minding my own business, doing a worship extravaganza. My wife and I were there. In our first week in Germany, on Wednesday morning, I got up from my time of prayer, and I heard the Lord say, organize a church, name it one church, and put it in Midlothian.
You weren't in the military.
Oh, no. We went to Germany through AFAS. Because our troops overseas, they try to make sure they have what they have in America, even over at home, even they're overseas wherever they are.
And how long ago was that?
This was 19 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I got up in prayer, and I went to the computer there in Germany, and I put Midlothian in, and to my surprise, there was a Midlothio and a Midlothian that popped up in Germany. And I was like, we're not coming home and getting the girls and coming back to Germany. I didn't really like Germany because the military bases are all in the rural areas. So it was beautiful, but there were cow pastures everywhere. And they left the windows open in all the restaurants.
Yeah.
So when you have flies, when you have cows and patties and restaurants, you got flies. So I walk in straight out of the airport from Fredericksburg. I'm about to kill every fly in the restaurant. My wife said, "Do not embarrass me." I was like, "They won't remember me." So putting it at Midlothian in, my wife was like, "Just settle down." So we went back to search engine, and Midlothian, Texas comes up. Now, mind you, when we moved from Austin, we were living in Mansfield. I had never been to Midlothian. I drove over Midlothian when they first put the bypass here, going to Houston. So I didn't know anybody here, had no connections at all to Midlothian, Texas. Wow. But I did hear the voice of the Lord. And people say, "Are you sure?" Well, it was the same voice that called me to preach. This year I celebrate 35 years of preaching. I started preaching when I was 15 years old. The same voice told me to marry my wife. The same voice that told me to organize the church is that same voice. So I know the Lord's voice.
Okay.
And so it's been 18 years, and we're still here.
We're glad to have you.
Yes, sir.
Can you share your overall perception of police officers in today's society? Because I like what you said earlier.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So my stance is, policing is, I have a view about this from a rural, small town effect, and then there's a larger effect.
Yes.
Because here in Midlothian, Texas, I tell people often that we got to make sure we don't allow national issues to become a local issue.
Exactly.
So locally, we don't have the issues that larger cities have. We have the privilege of actually getting to know our officers, our RSOs, the officers that work in the school district. They get to know all of our kids on a level where they come to games, even though they're not on the clock. I mean, they just love our kids. We get a chance to actually meet them, have conversations with them, do life with them in the community. Now, that's not the opportunities that you have typically in larger cities.
Sure.
Larger cities, there's already a persona that you meet before you even get to the place or get to meet the officers, or officers get to the community.
Yeah.
Depending on where the officer is policing, he or she already goes in with the idea of what this community is going to do or how they're going to behave. So my stance on policing is police officers are good people. You have your riff and your raff in every subgroup of people, even preachers. There are some preachers I think ought to stop pastoring because you don't like people. So if you don't like people, why are you trying to lead people?
Yeah.
So if you're a police officer and you don't like being around people, you need to find another line of work. So you got that riff-raff in all gamuts of systems. But for the most part, in my experience, policing has been a positive thing.
That's good. That's good. So what experiences have shaped your views on law enforcement? Have you had negative, positive, or both?
I've had, majority of my experiences have been totally positive. Even being here in Midlothian, I held a march when Mr. Floyd was killed.
Yes.
And it was a wonderful march. The police department and the people and the citizens, the community came together. And I believe we could come together and walk together because we know each other.
Yeah.
It just makes a difference. My wife, on the other hand, for me to be as close as I am to police officers here in Midlothian, it blows her mind because she's really had to grow into that. My wife was originally from Oakland, but she grew up, the latter part of growing up was in San Antonio.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And
Oakland, California gives you a totally different vibe.
Completely different. And in San Antonio, when she grew up, she had an incident with the police officers where she was almost choked to death.
Oh, wow.
And my wife is a small, petite girl.
Yeah.
So even back then, she was even smaller. And it was just one of those things where police officers came in brazenly, didn't really ask any questions. They just took the word of some adults and was going to charge all these kids with all these issues. And my wife was in the hospital. I mean, I didn't know her then, but the point is she had a different view of police officers.
Absolutely, yeah.
So for me to come here and the police chief and I go out to dinner to talk about things, she's like, I am really growing up because I do not like. So that was a feat for her, and it just attests to the fact that there are some good officers out there.
Yeah, yeah. How do you think your community here in Midlothian views police officers? It's definitely different than, say, a bigger metropolitan area.
So
I got to attend, if I remember right, you and I were on a roundtable talk, and it was at one of the churches, and one of the gentlemen there was talking about his early experiences. But the community, what do you think the vibe is here?
Well, I would say there would be three things I put on the altar of your heart. One is if you have some malintent, you're going to always dislike authority. So that's from police to your mom and your daddy.
Yeah.
So if you don't like accountability, then you're going to always run. You're going to always run from any form of authority.
Yes.
And so then you have I turn the diamond to also, if you don't know officers and what policing is.
Yes.
It's one thing to say, well, police officers need to do this. Well, there's a mandate of how you're supposed to police.
In your opinion, what are the most significant challenges that police officers face today?
The most significant challenge that police officers face today. I would say the most significant challenge police officers face today is policing outside of a wrong narrative.
Interesting. Okay.
Policing outside of a wrong narrative. Just like you can't say, okay, let's put it like this, all cultures are not monolithic.
I am so glad you said that because I say this all the time, especially with regard to us as African Americans. We are not a monolithic people.
We got different minds.
Exactly.
We have different backgrounds, different stories. Our grandmothers have different stories.
Absolutely.
So we don't come to the table all with the same idea about everything. We have a sense of what's right, but that sense of what's right is based on our narrative, based on how we were formalized. So when it comes to policing, there is it's interesting to me.
Yes.
It's interesting to me because people don't, I go back to the fact that I believe you have two different narratives of police officers. So if you have two different ideas of police officers, policing itself is going to have many different narratives. So the people meeting an officer and already sizing up who they are, they're going to back everything the blue says is a wrong narrative.
Interesting, yeah.
It's a wrong narrative. I know police officers that truly stand for what's right.
Yes.
And not trying to back a badge, especially when the badge is wrong. So if I was to show up and automatically have that idea about you as an officer, shame on me, because I missed the opportunity to get to know a pretty decent guy, a pretty cool dude.
Yes.
So when we automatically jump to a narrative that's not correct, it makes policing harder. It makes loving on the community harder. It makes appreciating your police force harder, because I have formed the entire narrative about something I know about someone I know nothing about. All I know is that he has a gun, he has a badge, so he's the authority.
Yes.
And I don't like authority.
And there's so much that goes into that. Well, and when you think of today, to bridge into that, what are the qualities that you think today's police officers should have then?
They've got to love humanity, first of all. If you don't like people, policing is not your line of work. Period. If you have a hard time talking to people, if you don't like certain groups because they don't smell certain ways, if you don't like because they look, this is not the job for you.
Well, then where does empathy go? How important is that in policing, in your opinion?
It's very important, because if I'm not willing to serve you to the extent that I am willing to take on your pain and put my feet in your shoes,
yes,
we're going to have a problem, because I'll be limited on what I do for you.
Yes.
If I don't want to take on your pain, then that's you. Just you. John, you got to get over that. You got to deal with that, man. You can grow up. No. Because if I don't take on your pain and put my feet in your shoes, I'm going to automatically, when you do something, you're a criminal. So now you're going to have this, I have this idea about you, so now I'm going to put some paperwork behind this idea. So I'm going to get you in the system so everybody else can know what I know, although I don't know you.
And you talked earlier about, which I found astounding, because we know that different parts of the country have different views, and different neighborhoods will have different views of what police officers should be doing, how they react in the community. Your wife, she's from Oakland, and you talked about that. You've had interactions with the police that have been positive for you here, and that's a good thing. That gives you a positive reflection of how police officers behave out here in society for you, and to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that's been my whole life, though.
Yes.
I've never had a bad interaction with police. That's not giving all police departments a pass.
Yes.
Because,
and again, you don't speak for.
I don't speak for everybody.
Exactly.
My biggest issue is I get pulled over and I get a ticket. Well, that's my fault.
Yes.
It's not them, it's me. Yet that's my story. I'm 50 years old. There are other guys that are 50 plus and 50 under that have a completely different spiel on policing.
That's true.
And that's granted. That's yours. That's not my story.
What do you think of police training today from what you've seen? Is it a good thing? Are we trending in the right direction, especially with all the technology?
I believe, from what I know of police training, I think it's going in a good direction. The part of police training that I believe that every police department has to do more in is developing empathy for people.
Interesting, yeah.
The militarization of our police departments, I think, is out of the wazoo. I think it is a response to what our community puts out on some areas. In some areas, it's just police officers doing too much. Now, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
I don't think PDs need machine guns. I mean, for what?
Yeah.
Now, if that is the area in which you are policing, granted, I can see some of that. But just the average police force having machine guns and tanks, and then what is all that for? That's a different conversation.
Absolutely.
Now, made me forget what I was about to say.
Well, no, I mean, I like what you said about the militaristic posture that you think that some police officers have. I was talking to another person I interviewed, Jeff Gomez, and he talked in that area, and he said, look, when you look at today's police officers, you got to look at the way they're armored up, the get-ups that they wear. With the community, how does that relate to the community?
If I see that, I'm already on guard, like, man, what's going on around here?
Exactly, yeah.
That's not the way I live. So that's not the way I live. Why are you coming at me like that? So I have to already be like, okay, now wait a minute.
Yes.
I got to look out for my wife and my children. So what's going on, bro? So I am not going to be as receptive to your presence because you're coming at me a way that's challenging me as a man.
Well, and we've got all of our little Secret Service earpieces in and, all of that, the tasers.
Like, what is going on? Because I haven't seen anyone die in that moment, but I've seen videos like everybody else has around the world.
Exactly.
Something come off so small, it turns out somebody's dying in 15 minutes. Like, what is going on?
How could police officers better relate, in your opinion? You're a minister to the community, within the community. How do they Is it more communication, coming to more functions? What do you think?
Sir, it's as simple as showing up. When you show up when there's not a need, when the need arises, I'm more welcoming to even see your presence.
Yeah.
So don't show up when the fumes are high and everybody's at a 10.
Mm-hmm.
No. Let's build a relationship long before that. The question is never if something's going to happen. It's always when.
True.
Never if. So until if comes, just show up when there's an opportunity. Show up when we're having a cookout. Just show up when there's the next football. Just show up.
Yeah.
Because if it's going to show up regardless. It's coming.
I've got one, especially with your role in the community. What role do you believe faith and spirituality play in policing?
That's a great question. I believe that faith and spirituality it's a big role within policing. So it doesn't matter how policing started. Spiritually, like I love the opportunity to go and sit with our police officers. I used to do a lot of ride-alongs back in the day.
Yes.
And praying with them.
Yeah.
Making sure they're asking them questions about their home life.
Yeah.
You know, because if life is not right at home, that means he or she's gonna come to work distracted.
Exactly, yeah.
And stuff happens.
Yes.
You know, so spiritually, I love the fact of getting to know our officers, so letting them know that Pastor Mac is praying for them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to agree with everything you do, but just know that I believe the best in you, that you're going to police our community and police it well.
Yeah.
So spirituality plays a great role in our policing, so that our officers know that at least they have some place they can come and get some support, and at the same time know that Pastor Mac gonna hold them accountable.
Yes. Okay.
You don't get a pass because you're a police officer.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, we all are human beings. You treat those as you want to be treated.
So you believe that police officers should be more involved in community events?
Yes, sir.
That's an
question.
important thing.
Without question. Show up when, not show up if. Just show up.
Yeah.
Learn the community. And even so much as I've even dropped the idea into some conversations of our city, making it that much easier for our police officers to live in our communities, giving them some kind of incentive or a break, or just whatever that looks like in the polity of a municipality.
Yeah.
What can we do to offer our police officers and firemen some kind of stipend to move into our community? It just helps the situation out when I'm living in the community that I'm policing. It makes good sense.
Interesting. It does.
If I love the community enough to work for it,
Yes.
I would love enough to live in it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How can police officers support families in crisis situations, and do you think that's important? I used to have the argument with officers as to whether are we social workers or cops, or a combination of both. And then some would get upset and say, I'm here to be a police officer, I'm a cop.
Yeah.
But really, we are social workers
Yes, sir.
in so many different ways.
And I pray for those who don't see that.
Yes.
Because coming in, when you walk into a building as a police officer, you have a gun. You are the authority, period. Yet walking in humility says, I have a gun, but I'm not going to pull it out unless I have to.
Yes.
I would rather for a person to see a police officer's heart that's wrapped up in clothes, skin and clothes, before they see the gun. So that means I'm doing life with the community long before problems happen. I can't just show up in my uniform as if I'm Superman, coming in to save the day. Superman is one of my favorite heroes, but Superman only shows up when it's convenient for Superman.
True.
And we cannot have Superman idealistic police people that just show up when the need is for them to show up in their uniform, as tight as they want to be, just looking good. No. I need you to show up when nothing else is happening. I need to know as a father that if certain officers show up at the school where my son is, well, there should be a level of comfort within me. But I know those are good guys. Those are calm, level-headed guys. You just never know what teenagers may be doing. But I know that our officers are calm, they're level-headed, they're going to ask questions, they're going to diffuse moments.
Yes.
Because I'd hate to race up to the school. Now I got to defend my son.
Yeah.
And I'm going to defend my kid.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's my kid.
I can definitely understand that.
So it helps every situation out when we know each other. That's why I love setting up platforms so I can meet officers. Officers can meet the community.
Yeah.
Because if we know each other, it's going to be that much harder for us to go off on the deep end.
True.
Because we know each other.
Yeah. Well, let's look at integrity then. How do police officers, in your opinion, demonstrate integrity in their work?
If there's not integral placed on the table, it limits the community appreciating who you are as an officer.
Okay.
I'm not going to appreciate your serving the community, because your serving the community is just on your card. It's not in your heart.
That's an interesting point.
So you're serving the community, because I need an officer that's going to serve the community when they're not on duty. I need an officer that's going to write the truth because he lives the truth. He writes his reports. I know it's going to be right because he lives the truth. That's the kind of integrity we need to have, that when you're off duty, when you're just in casual conversation at the police department or outside taking a smoke or just going out to hang out with the fellas, that conversation is still up to par. We're not going below the belt buckle with some of these conversations outside of being on duty. That's the kind of integrity that the community should have from everyone that the community pays.
That's the way you would define good policing too.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's not just my responsibility as a pastor to walk in integrity. Especially if you are a believer and you are a police officer, you're held to a higher level.
Yeah.
So you have to be the one at the water fountain say, hey fellas, no, we're not doing that. Integrity.
Yeah.
Walk in truth and honesty at all times. I talk entirely too much, John. I talk too much. I talk all the time.
But that's a good thing.
So that means I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
Because your words going to come back and bite you in the back.
Exactly.
So I'm going to tell you the truth regardless. That's integrity.
Yes.
When you can hold yourself accountable to truth, you're walking in integrity.
Okay. How can police officers better engage with diverse populations? We need that, don't we?
Yes, sir. They can better. So a police officer can engage with diverse populations by learning the area that they're policing.
So glad you said that.
So when I have the opportunity to go overseas, I try to do my best to learn the language, some of the language. I try to get my palate together for the food. I same thing for an officer. When you know that this is the area that you're going to be policing, it's going to make your life that much easier to learn the area and the environment in which you are policing. It just makes sense. A lot of things that we're not doing doesn't make sense. It's easy.
Yeah.
If I am policing a certain area that's away from my comfort zone, for me to figure out, okay, how do I meet these people? How do I gain their heart? How do they learn me? Because if I show up, let's say if I'm policing an all-white area, I'm 6'3", 293 pounds, broad shouldered. I'm bald, and I have a beard.
Exactly.
So I have everything in criminology concepts that makes me look some kind of way. So that means if I'm a police an all-white area, I need to go in when the temperatures are down, so I can be received.
Yeah, and received well.
And received well.
Yeah.
It just makes good sense. I think it makes good sense.
Well, let me ask you this, Pastor Beck. What do you think of the technology we use now? When I came into policing, we didn't have near the technology we have now. What do you think of that?
Technology is ran and operated by human beings. So if a man's heart is still bad, he's going to use technology in a way that's offensive against the people and not use it properly. I think technology is absolutely wonderful. There is nothing wrong with technology when it's used properly. When it's not used properly, then we're going to have some problems.
Well, you know what? I'm going to ask you this. What initiatives do you think could bridge the gap between law enforcement and communities of color? Just more communication?
More, I believe if we can get more people to sponsor conversations at tables.
Okay.
So let's say if the hospital was to organize a dinner at the table that brings the church, the school system, the police officers, firemen together. So it shouldn't just be, so case in point. So as you can tell, I'm black, right?
Yes.
So It's easy for people to say, okay, well, Pastor Mac can get involved with that because it's a black issue. Okay, really?
I'm so glad you're touching on that in that way too.
So,
we're not a monolithic
we're not
people.
a monolithic group of people.
Okay.
So why don't you, as a head of a hospital, before an issue happens, you host a gathering. And you bring us together.
Yes.
Instead of me bringing us together because something happened.
Yes.
Or me bringing us together, and maybe nothing's going on, but when I bring them together, well, that's Pastor Mac. He's gonna speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. And as wonderful and as cute as that is, that's not all my responsibility. We're in a community together. If everybody would understand our role as a group, we're in a community. So when the police do their job, when the church does their job, when the fire does their job, when the historical community does their job, when the A board does their job, when the city council does their job, when everybody does their part, it just makes living together that much wonderful. You're gonna have riff and raff.
Yes.
You're gonna have it. The old preacher would say, it's just like coming to a city. A police chief doesn't know who's moving in. It's like the pastor, when someone joins the church, you don't know who's joining. But you got to love on all of them.
Absolutely.
How do we do that?
Pastor Mac, I got to tell you, thank you so much for the interview.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I hope that the audience loves everything we've had to talk about, because I think we've had some interesting things and
Yes,
points.
sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm just an old man with a whole lot of ideas, a whole lot of thoughts. So,
Well,
thank you for listening to old man ramble.
All right, sir.